Hello, and welcome to another episode of Charles Weekly Party. I'm Charles, your host, and before we get started, let's roll the intro. Alright, so opening up today, I'd like to start off by saying today's architecture segment was entirely possible because of technology. And I say that because the building I chose out is located in Mexico, so most of the documentation I could find on it was in Spanish, which unfortunately I do not understand. So, thankfully, integrated translation tools were able to make my life a lot easier in order to translate the documentation on the building I'm looking at today into something I could more easily understand. So, the other thing on a technology edge is that later on I'm going to be looking at a couple of new approaches to how to make computer chips. And I'm going to be looking at a couple of new approaches being taken to create computer chips and how these new approaches may forever change electronics. But before I get to that, I have to talk about my architecture. And today I'm looking at the Casa Kalyvas, which I may or may not be pronouncing right, but I do apologize if I'm not. So this is designed by Dufresne Architects, and it's located in Colima, Mexico. So when I was looking at some architecture, I actually happened to be poking through a couple of decent houses, and I saw this particular house, and it caught my eye. And I don't know, it was just something about it grabbed my attention and wouldn't let me move it anywhere else. So that's why I'm talking about it today. One of the first things I noticed was that this building design made heavy use of rectangles. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but it's something that's noticeable, and I think actually in this particular case it looks really good. And talking about the site, which for some reason is a little bit further down in my notes than it should be, two sides of the site are straight. The other straight, and I should say form a 90-degree angle. The other two sides are curved, which gives the building an interesting dynamic, to say the least. And personally, I think it gives the form that the building has more character. And for one reason or another, I think rectangles on rectangles isn't great, but rectangles on a curved piece of land, that actually has, I don't know what it is, but it makes it seem a little bit more natural, even though that's sort of contradictory. Rectangles aren't exactly the most natural shapes. So it's a little bit, it's one of those interesting architecture dichotomies, to say, I guess is the best way I can put it. So something rectangular looking more natural. Kind of makes you think for a second. But that's not all I wanted to talk about. Of course, the exterior is the first part of the building that I saw when I was looking through possible pieces of architecture to talk about in the episode. And the other piece that caught me was the use of exterior materials and natural elements. So the exterior actually is not just one material, which I think looks pretty nice. When I say looks nice, I mean having a variety of materials and not just one material. I need to be clear on that. I think it's almost kind of mundane if you have one exterior material. But moving on, the exterior materials used are wood, slate, which may or may not be genuine, I don't know, stone, glass, and metal. And that sounds like a long, I don't know if, it sounds almost like a long/short list because it feels long in terms of exterior materials because most people don't necessarily think about a house having a lot of different materials on the outside. But in the sense I'm using it as, the exterior materials aren't just, or are placed deliberately. And my favorite thing to do with architectural houses is compare them to cookie cutter houses. And one of the elements here that's coming to mind is that yes, a lot of houses, both architecturally designed ones and just your normal run-of-the-mill identical or sort of reused house plan. And both of them have glass in them for windows. Both of them have windows. But there is a difference in the window itself. And I'm not just saying because one window looks nicer than another. I'm saying because one window is more deliberately thought out and placed than the other. In your average home, you have windows placed for the sake of making sure that the building's up to code, because by law, every single bedroom has to have a window for means of fire exit. Well, some homes just have windows enough to satisfy that and look decent enough to be sellable, and that's it. Whereas here, every window is placed deliberately so from the outside it looks like the windows aren't just placed there or patterned there, but it looks like the window was placed in such a way that it has to be there for a reason, and you don't necessarily know what the reason is. And my favorite thing about architecture is that I can say without a doubt, there is a good reason for the windows being where they are. And regardless of whether or not I know them, I know the architect had good intentions putting them there. And by good intentions, I mean a good reason for putting them where they are. But the other piece on the exterior that caught my attention was the use of natural materials. I know the thought that's probably popping into your mind right now is, well, don't most houses have a lawn outside or some plants or flowers or shrubs or trees? And you'd be right, most do. But the interesting thing about the plants and shrubs that are present here is that they're all, I think, placed deliberately, or actually, the word I want to use is more cultivated deliberately. So, and one of the things that sort of caught my eye is that in one spot there is a tree growing straight through the deck. And it has a deliberately cut area to be able to have the tree come through and have rainwater go down to nourish the tree's roots. And based on the building and the visible thickness of the tree, it's beyond safe. say that that tree was on site before the building was. And what's really deliberate about that is that it's not placed there just for kicks or giggles. And when this was being built, someone didn't just say, "Oh, I want to put a patio here, but there's a tree there." The solution here was just build around the tree, make it a extra extra little building element, because the end of the patio covers over the bathroom for the pool. So realistically speaking, I think it takes natural elements to a new level, and I think having minimal disruption of the pre-existing natural elements, I think, is an admirable idea, because it's visibly noticeable, or it's visibly obvious that a bunch of the things there were there prior to the building. And I love how it makes it feel like, yes, this is a man-made home, but no, this isn't but this wasn't oh, this is my home, nature can stay out of it, or nature can stay stay outside, out of bounds, out of sight, out of mind. This looks like it was, there's nature. Let's bring it in to the house, make it something to be proud of, something that works with everything. So the pool, instead of having your normal pool patio next to it of concrete or brick or whatnot, you have a little bit of, I think it's stone that surrounds the pool, but you also but beyond that little bit of stone, there's grass, more natural material, which isn't necessarily something a lot of people would think about. Or I guess the best question is, or now the question pops into my mind, is it as much of a pool, or is it more of a decorative water piece? And I think it's, based on the sizing of it, I think it's a interactive sort of water piece. So it's something you can sit in to cool off, but it's not large enough for you to dive into, large enough for you to do swimming laps from one end to the other. But it's decent enough that it's not using a lot of water, and big enough so that you can use it as a place to sort of cool off at the end of a hot day, which down in Mexico you're going to have a lot of. But enough about that. I do want to talk about some of the interior elements, because they're pretty darn fun. And the first level, I mentioned that you have the pool outside, but there's also a outdoor/indoor, I guess is the best way to put it, bathroom with a shower. And the reason I say it's outdoor/indoor is that bathroom is only accessible outdoors next to the water features, which is what leads me to believe that water feature is meant for people to get in and cool off, because it is literally connected to the pool. And this is where the fun architectural meanings come in. But also, that's at the end of the patio on the second, that has a tree growing through it, so that there's a way to hide the support, or some of the support pieces for the patio, so you don't have a cantilever or have it look like a pier or look like a what's the word for it? Just a dock from a lake or whatnot. So rather than looking like just another pier, it looks more interesting because there's a box at the end that actually serves the purpose of holding a bathroom and washroom and having a little bit of storage area in the back. But also inside is the kitchen, which connects straight to which has a connection. So underneath the patio, there's an outdoor dining area, and that connects directly with the kitchen. And the kitchen also connects with the indoor dining area, which is a pretty nice double height room with a even more fascinating light fixture. Actually, when I saw the light fixture, I thought back to it reminded me of the ones that are in the Metropolitan Opera House, it's actually a pretty fun design story. But if I ever talk about the Met Opera House, I will be sure to bring up how exactly those light fixtures were designed, because it's an interesting story. But before I get off track too much, the other things on the first floor are the connections, or the front door, the connection to the carport. So rather than having a garage, this has a sort of sheltered area where you can place 3 cars under and not get rained on walking out to, or have to shovel out. So, wait a second. I don't know why I'm thinking about shoveling something out in the middle of Mexico, but here we are. You could tell I'm more of a used to a snowy winter as well. Now, the other thing on the first floor that sort of got me thinking was a possible multi-purpose room. And I say multi-purpose room because I can't quite figure out what it is. The plans I got were not high enough resolution for me to accurately figure out what I'm seeing, but based on what I saw on the second floor, I don't think it's a guest room, but it has a full bath directly connected to it. So my mind is stuck wondering what exactly the purpose of this room is, and in all reality, I don't think I'll ever quite figure it out. But could be multi-purpose room or flexible room. So, and one thing I did note out about this house is that it has no shortage of bathrooms, which is something I can really appreciate, because I'll just say this, I've had family gatherings at places with 1 bathroom. And that's when you really hope there's nothing in the meal, no one has any adverse reaction to whatever's in the meal, because there's not enough bathrooms to go around. And for the most part, most houses don't have enough bathrooms that each occupant can use one without any issue. And this house sort of throws that on end. So, and maybe knowing enough with architecture, maybe the designer had bad memories of not having enough bathrooms, or maybe the client had bad memories of not having enough bathrooms that warranted having a plentiful number of them. But before I'll cut out the potty talk and talk about the second level with the 3 bedrooms, each having their own bathroom, with the master bedroom having access to that deck that I was talking about before that has the tree going through it. And also the other reason you can tell which one's the master bathroom is which one has 2 sinks and a really large closet. I mean, you gotta have room for all of your shirts and shoes, right? Although my disagreement on the design is it's nice to have the bathroom and the closet connected, but I would want to have a direct connection between the bedroom and the closet, so I don't need to necessarily walk through the bathroom to get what I need to get dressed for the day. Also, because thought process is that there are some clothing materials that do best when not kept in too humid of an environment, and I didn't see as much of a division between the two, although it's quite likely there's a pocket door. So unfortunately I don't have the plans up, so I can't say for sure. But that's just my thoughts on it, and as long as the client is happy, it's golden. So the other thing on the second level is a utility area, which, if you think about it, makes a lot of sense, because how many people have to go and bring or take laundry? Laundry room is traditionally thought of as being in the basement. So how many times do you have to take laundry from whatever floor you're on, which is usually the master bedroom is on the highest floor. So in an average 2-story house with a basement, you have to carry your laundry down at least 1, if not 2 flights of stairs to be able to do your laundry. Or you have to carry your laundry down at least 1 flight of stairs, if not 2 flights, just to be able to clean it. And this house let's put it on the second level to make everyone's life easier. I think that does it on what I had for this particular house. I guess my thought process is I really have appreciation for architectural houses, because they just take into account so many things that are thought about more specifically for a client. Although I've mentioned it before, but I'll happily say it again. One of the biggest cons about a decently designed house like this is if you do have a good enough house, you're not going to want to move. And what I'm sort of happily noticing now is if you do have a custom designed house, which will almost certainly satisfy people more than a house that they bought that was built ahead of time. They're just buying the pre-built house and buying it for features or size or whatnot. But I guess the reason that those sort of things will always stay around is so that people who want to move around and not necessarily stick in one spot can do so, and having a custom designed house sort of ties you into a place. Anyway, that's my spiel with architecture right now, with the architecture of the day. Now, I know we just talked about something positive with having more than enough bathrooms, but now we have to talk about something where there isn't enough right now, and that's a chip shortage. So the chip shortage is not going to be getting better, and now we're looking at the possibility of having bigger problems for the economy and Christmas coming up because of the way things are going. So right now in China, there's a slight problem of having increased power demand, which, when your power plants are powered by coal, more demand, more coal, and your cost is increasing, but the power regulators in China are not permitting the electric companies to increase their rates to cover the increasing cost of coal. So thanks to that, there are there are now power outages going around China affecting both commercial and residential applications. And one of the biggest things I'm noting out is that some of the factories that supply Apple and Tesla are among the affected, and I think 2 or 3 Taiwanese companies also noted out that they were going to be affected by this shortage, and specifically those companies produce semiconductors, or semiconductor companies, which produce your computer chips. So some companies are turning to generators, which have a high cost to borrow and then fuel costs of running them, which all in all doubles the price of energy. So the situation isn't exactly getting better, it isn't getting better, it's getting worse. We'll have to see how things turn out, and hopefully something will resolve sooner rather than later, because it's October now. We're a little less than 2 months away from the start of the holiday shopping season, and we're going to have to see whether or not prices end up stabilizing. They may not, and that may mean that a bunch of people don't necessarily get their dream Christmas lists. But that's the world we live in right now. Speaking of chips, Intel is working on a new neuromorphic chip called Loihi 2. And what it does is it really rethinks the way computers process. And I'm talking about processing in the way of computers have sort of normal way of computers working. But neural computing is basically trying to make computers that more closely, or have more abilities more closely aligned with those of the human brain. So it really does rethink the way everything works, because according to Intel, 99% of computing applications right now are done with computers that operate on a clock and work with a rigid instruction set. And what Loihi 2 is doing is it's looking at computing without needing that clock, so asynchronous computing, because that's the way the human brain works. And we know offhand that the human brain is a pretty efficient computational thing, and it has to be for more than one, or for many reasons. So all little interesting things, and I really can't wait to see how this ends up turning out, because it's astonishing to see where we go with computers. Although there are plenty of concerns with making computers that can think more like humans, because, well, there are those issues. But if you want to really take making computers think like humans to a new level, you have to look at what Samsung is doing, which is essentially trying to create a neural copy and paste. And what I mean by that is Samsung would like to sort of copy and paste a neural map onto a computer chip. And they're currently working with Harvard researchers to reverse engineer the brain, to try and figure out how exactly the brain works, to try and make computer chips that can use more of that same methodology. And my question is, are chips going to start getting headaches, maybe? but we'll have to see how that ends up turning out. But the primary goals are to use some of the best capabilities of the brain, including having low power usage, reasonable adaptability and versatility, and the ability to learn things. But having a computer learn that maybe if I do a 2-step process, it's easier than a 5-step process, and knowing in the future, even if it's told to do that 5-step process, to do a 2-step process, save itself some time and energy. And that ought to be interesting. I think it brings sort of new meaning into how we're going to be looking at how computers are going to be working in the future. And I know the biggest question that's on people's minds is, how is this going to... You have plenty of movies that have brought it into light, but you have people who validly wonder whether or not creating a chip or creating computers that can think enough like us, if they can outthink us. And my only real response on that is, to some degree, we as humans like pushing boundaries, trying to learn more, do more, and whatnot, which could have adverse reactions. So there's realistically no telling what a computer might think if granted the unrestrained ability to think. Also, if computers are able to learn a lot more and able to learn a lot faster, if they make decisions, they can learn how to do things, then you've created something that has a lot of skills, a lot of time, and a lot of power. It stands to reason that a computer could become smarter than us, and as we are very well aware, intelligence can be used for good purposes or nefarious purposes. So, realistically speaking, we have no clue how this is going to pan out. All we know is we can push the limits and hope for the best, which has been the standard human mantra for thousands of years. Speaking of standards, I have a standard that when I'm done talking about stuff for the day, I conclude the episode. So I do hope you enjoyed this episode. I guess my aperitif for the week is just to think outside the box. And you can take that exactly how you might like to. So, if you did enjoy this episode, please subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And also, if you go to anchor.fm/CharlesWeeklyParty, you can listen, interact with voice messages, and even support the podcast. Also, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please be sure to leave a review. And if you want to see the action, you can do so on YouTube. So, take care, have a good week, and roll the outro.